Hello, guys. Today is it's Saturday, and tomorrow will be the 9th. So it's time for another lesson. And in another week, we can all be back together again if we choose to for the main worship service. And then after that, hopefully it won't be too much longer before we can have our classes again, because I really miss you guys, and I think most of you feel the same way. So our lesson today is still out of Proverbs, and we're talking about the mouth, and everybody's got one, and everybody uses it quite a bit. I don't know who does these studies, but one that I came across said that the average person opens their mouth 700 times a day. And I assume that's to say something and not to eat, because none of us are quite that big. So 700 times a day, and they say an average of 18,000 words. And if you're that average person saying 18,000 words a day, if those were all recorded and put into a book, you would write 66 books of 800 pages each. 66 books of 800 pages with the things that you say. And you may be thinking, you know what? Nobody knows what I say. Nobody remembers anything I say. Well, you're wrong. In fact, your words will probably outlive you. People remember what you say sometimes for years. And just as proof of that, I pulled some pretty old quotes, nothing brand new, and I sent that out in a quiz, and I'm betting you that most of you got them. So let's just see how you did on that quiz. A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Well, that's Shakespeare. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask instead what you can do for your country. That's John Kennedy. Associate with men of good quality if you esteem your own reputation, for it's better to be alone than in bad company. Now, that's George Washington. Frankly, I didn't know he said that, but I know enough of what he did say to be able to, if I'd looked at that list, like you guys, to have said, yeah, that's got to be George Washington, because that sounds like him. By your words you will be condemned, and by your words you will be justified. That's Jesus. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that sounds just like Martin Luther King, and that is who it was. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the principle that all men are created equal. I bet every one of you knew that that was Abraham Lincoln. You never met him, but you knew his words. Friendship isn't about who you've known the longest. It's all about the friend who comes and stands by your side in bad times. And doesn't that sound like Charlie Brown? I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death. Patrick Henry, and I'm betting you got it. I regret that I have but one life to give for my country. Nathan Hale, again, I bet you got it. I wasn't going to eat it, I was just going to taste it. Now that's Winnie the Pooh. Sounds just like him. I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. You probably haven't seen The Godfather in years, but you knew that was Don Corleone. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That's John. It's a wonderful day in the neighborhood. Well, I haven't been to see the movie, and I don't have any kid younger than 30, but I know that's Mr. Rogers. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. Ronald Reagan. Mr. Watson, come here, I want you. You probably learned that was Alexander Graham Bell years ago, back in elementary school. One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Some of you are old enough to remember when Neil Armstrong said that. She loves me, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's the Beatles. John Lennon, Paul McCartney probably had something to do with that one too. So also the tongue is a small part of the body, and yet it boasts of great things. Behold how great a forest is set aflame by such a small fire. That's James. The force is strong with this one. Darth Vader. The only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Franklin D. Roosevelt. We hang the petty thieves and appoint the great ones to public office. That's Aesop. Truer than you think, huh? We're not in Kansas anymore, but you all knew that was Dorothy Gale. What hath God wrought? Samuel Morse with the Morse Code. You ain't nothing but a hound dog. Some of you may not have been born before Elvis Presley died, but you knew that was Elvis. And you can't handle the truth. That's Colonel Nathan Jessup. So people you never met, and quotes maybe you never saw, and yet you were able to identify the speaker because it sounded like them. People judge you by what you say as well. They assess our character. They judge our faith. We either pull people toward us or we push them away based on the kinds of things that we say. Now, the author of Proverbs, Solomon, told us a lot of things about the tongue. And with our tongue, we can use it for good, we can use it for evil. Everything that we say fits one of those two categories. Even the simple things, and sometimes it's not even a word, it's just a smile with your mouth that can say to a stranger, acknowledge that you're there. When you're talking to a baby and saying, "Oh, aren't you such a pretty thing?" They don't have a clue what you're saying, but they know you're engaging them. The things that we say do pull people toward us or push them away. And the things that we say we will be judged by. Jesus said so. So let's look at the things that we can do with our tongue according to Proverbs, and then let's look at the things we should not do with our tongue according to Proverbs. Okay, so the first thing we can use our tongue for that's a good thing is for sound advice. Now, sometimes people don't ask you for your advice. And when they don't, it's probably because they don't want it. But if you are called upon to offer advice, you can use it for good. Here are a couple of proverbs that deal with that. The mouth of the righteous brings forth wisdom. The lips of the wise spread knowledge. Knowledge and wisdom seem to be in pretty short supply in today's society, and most of us can attest to that with things that we hear on the news, things we see on Facebook, things you may hear at work. Knowledge and wisdom are not in great supply. But if you have someone who can speak those things into your life, you're blessed. If you're someone who can speak wisdom and knowledge into someone else at a time that they need it, then they are blessed. Okay, the tongue can speak rebuke and reproof. A rebuke impresses a man of discernment more than 100 lashes a fool. Or faithful are the wounds of a friend. A wise man is someone that you can go to and say, "You know, my friend, I think you're on the wrong path. I think you might ought to stop and think before you do that. What's going on with you right now? Why are you headed this direction? That doesn't seem like you." Those are things that you could say to someone who's wise, and they'll stop and think about it. I'd rather have a friend who will tell me when I'm headed the wrong way than someone who's going to just let me head off in the wrong direction and not care at all about the fact that I'm going to go over a cliff if I keep moving that direction. Okay, a third thing that you can do with your tongue that's a good thing to do, according to Proverbs, is use it for encouragement. An anxious heart weighs a man down, but a kind word cheers him up. The tongue that brings healing is a tree of life. A man finds joy in giving an apt reply, and how good is a timely word. Pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Now, two of those deal with healing. Now, if you talk to someone who's in the medical field, they will tell you that a person who is surrounded by positive, cheerful people who encourage them to do what needs to be done and to believe in a good outcome, that they heal faster and are more likely to find a good outcome than those people who are surrounded by people who tear down and who are negative. Don't be one of those people. Be someone who encourages. Be someone who lifts up. Be someone who instills courage in someone, because that's what encouragement means. And you're blessed if you have encouragers in your life. And you're a blessing if you are an encourager. Okay, the fourth thing that they tell us we can do with our tongue that's a good thing is we can witness with it. The lips of the righteous nourish many. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life, and he who wins souls is wise. Every one of us had someone who spoke the gospel to us, who spoke words of life to us, and it's made a lifetime's worth of difference in our lives. Are you that tree of life for someone? Maybe at work, maybe in your family, maybe in your neighborhood. But there's no excuse for us not to give what has been given to us. We weren't saved just because it was an end in itself, but we were saved for our sake and for the sake of those that we could share it with. We are supposed to pass it on. We are supposed to be a witness. That's the last command that Christ gave before he arose, that we were to be his witnesses. And that's what we use our tongue for. Now, there are wrong uses of our tongue as well. And there's as many of those as there are good things that we can do with it. One thing we can do with our tongue that's a negative is flattery. Food gained by fraud tastes sweet to a man, but he ends up with a mouthful of gravel, chewing rocks. A lying tongue hates those it hurts, and a flattering mouth works ruin. He who rebukes a man will in the end gain more favor than he who has a flattering tongue. Now, the world tells us you can smooze your way to the top, just brown nose your way all the way up. But Scripture tells us that if we are honest with people, if we encourage when encouragement is needed, but we rebuke when rebuking is needed, as opposed to flattery, that in the end, we're a person that can be trusted. You've seen those commercials, it's been a long time, but that have to do with truth-telling, and you've got Abraham Lincoln's wife saying, does this dress make me look fat? And Abraham's trying to decide, what am I supposed to say here? I'm not saying that you have to be cruel in what you say, but let's don't flatter and lead somebody down a wrong path. Meaningless flattery doesn't help anyone. Okay, the second thing that we can do that's negative with our tongues is quarreling. A fool's lips bring him strife. How many people have talked themselves into a mess? I know someone recently who lost their job because they said some things they just shouldn't have said. And his mouth invites a beating. A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control. Throw out the mocker, and fighting goes too. Quarrels and insults will disappear. Don't befriend angry people or associate with hot-tempered people, or you will learn to be like them and endanger your soul. You know, you really don't have to say everything you think. Thomas Jefferson, and this is not a quote I chose to use for him, but it's one I've heard from him and have known for a long time. And he said, when angry, count to 10. When very angry, count to 100. If you take the time to count to 100, there are a whole lot of things you wouldn't say that have probably popped out of your mouth that later you wish you had not said, that there would have been a better way to have dealt with that situation. I'm not saying that you're ignoring it, but things said in anger generally don't bring a good resolution. Things said in anger don't put us back on the path to reconciliation. Stop and think about what you're going to say before you just blow your top. Quarreling is never a good use of your tongue. Okay, the tongue may be used for gossip. Well, if quarreling's bad, then gossiping is just as bad, if not worse. He who conceals his hatred has lying lips, and whoever spreads slander is a fool. A perverse man stirs up dissension, and a gossip separates close friends. He who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. You know, you don't have to tell everything you know. Just because some piece of information has come to you doesn't mean that the whole world needs to know about it. This is something I sometimes have said to the kids at school. It's not something that's original with me, but it is something that I think that all of us, adults as well as kids, would be wise to consider when we're talking about whether we're going to share some information. 3 questions. Number 1, is it true? If you have to start the question or the statement by saying, well, I don't know if this is true or not, but, then just don't say it. Just don't. If it's not true or you don't know that it's true, end of story. Just stop. A second question, is it kind? Put it in this phrase, would you want someone to say it about you? If you were the person in that situation, would you want someone to spread that information? And if the answer's no, then don't. Scripture tells us that we are to be kind one to another. Let your words be kind. Third question, is it necessary? Is telling this person going to help solve the problem, or is it just spreading the information a little further? If it's not something that's going to solve a problem, then don't say it. Just don't say it. Now, I'm not talking about the kinds of things that somebody's excited because they're going to be a new grandma, and so you've heard that and you want to tell other people too. That's fine. But maybe if that mama's not excited that she's going to be a grandma, if there's some reasons why she's not sure that's a wonderful piece of news, then shut your mouth. Gossip never honors God, and it never puts you in a good light either, because a gossip is not someone who can be trusted. Okay, number 4, the tongue can be used for lying. A truthful witness saves lies, but a false witness is deceitful. Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue lasts only a moment. Okay, there's 7 things that we are told in Proverbs that the Lord hates. 2 of those deal with the mouth and this very concept right here. One of those is a lying tongue, and the other is a false witness. Now, there's not a one of us who's never told a lie, but there's not a one of us who should ever tell another one. The tongue may be used to seduce to evil, keeping you from the immoral woman, from the smooth tongue of the wayward wife. The mouth of an adulteress is a deep pit, and he who is under the Lord's wrath will fall into it. Your tongue is meant to bless people. Don't use it to seduce someone into an evil action. Your tongue can be used to talk too much. When words are many, sin is not absent, but he who holds his tongue is wise. He who guards his lips guards his life, but he who speaks rashly will come to ruin. A man of knowledge uses words with restraint. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent, and discerning if he holds his tongue. That means you don't have to have an opinion on everything, and you don't have to comment on everything that goes by in your life. You also don't have to answer every question. The fact that somebody asks you something does not obligate you to answer it. And how blessed we would all be if we would learn to speak less. And as someone who has made her living talking, I have to sometimes be careful not to say too much, and sometimes I'm not careful enough. So, those are things that we can do that are good with our tongue, things that we can do that are bad with our tongue. But how do we tame our tongue if we've gotten ourselves into a mess of bad habits? Well, it's really not all that different than what we were talking about when we talked about self-control. You start off by admitting you've got a problem. You talk too much. You say the wrong things. You don't use your voice and your words to build. You're quiet when you ought to speak, and you speak when you ought to be quiet. So admit you have a problem. Then memorize James 1:9. Let every person be swift to hear. Listen to what people are saying. Slow to speak, as in don't always offer your opinion. And slow to anger. Don't blow off with your mouth. Third, ask a friend to hold you accountable. To say, hey, time to stop it. And fourth, yield your tongue to God. To a man belongs the plans of the heart, but from the Lord comes the reply of the tongue. Let him say the right things. We were told in Scripture, when Jesus told the disciples that it would be given them what was to be said when they came before governors and magistrates, that God would give us the words. So don't always try to plan ahead. This is what I would say. This is what I would have done. This is what. Let God lead. And this was a prayer that I found that seemed appropriate, and I'm going to end our lesson with it. The tongue can be put under the Lord's control. Have you ever said, Lord, my tongue now belongs to you? Have you ever told the Lord, I've been using my tongue for myself. I'm now going to use it for you. Here are my lips. Let me speak for you. Here's my mouth. Let my mouth speak the words that you want. I hope you're having a great week. If you're not, I hope you'll let somebody know. And I will talk with you when the opportunity comes. Bye.